body is consistent in height and weight with that of Jeremiah Oliver.
The discovery in this grassy area in Sterling, 6 months after 5-year-old Jeremiah Oliver went missing from his Fitchburg home.
The body was found, it was in a wrapped condition. In a wrapped condition, it was somewhat concealed from the elements.
Somebody called me about they found a little boy fitting the description of my son.
They targeted this location off Route 190 South from information developed by the Worcester County Sheriff's Department in the jail. District Attorney Joe Early says the little boy's body was wrapped in a blanket, concealed in a duffel bag, and it appears to be a homicide.
How can somebody hurt this little boy? Now the question is, who did it?
Jeremiah wasn't reported missing until December, 3 months after he disappeared. His sister told employees at her school she and her siblings were being abused and Jeremiah was gone. Jeremiah's mother, Elsa Oliver, and her boyfriend, Alberto Sierra, are both behind bars in connection with his disappearance. 3 DCF employees were fired after the state discovered a caseworker had missed monthly visits with Jeremiah since last April. The focus is now on forensics.
My heart is very, very heavy.
Thomas Hughes is the pastor for the 5-year-old's family. They learned this afternoon that the body found Friday along Interstate 190 in Sterling had been positively identified as Jeremiah.
We're going to replace, anger and hatred and frustration with love.
Release it and release Jeremiah's spirit.
We all wanted him to come home. And he's home. I said he's home. Amen. I said he's home. Amen.
5-year-old boy, Jeremiah Oliver. Unbelievable story, and perhaps this is another one. And I think once we go through the timeline of this, you'll realize this is another one that should not have happened. More should have been done to protect this 5-year-old. Mike Brooks is with me. Mike, here's his photo.
Yep.
Just 5 years old. Can't protect himself. It's up to, obviously, his parents, and then if they're not going to protect him, we have to be the ones protecting him.
Exactly, and he got let down by society.
May of 2013, the last Department of Child and Families interaction with Jeremiah. That's May of 2013. June of 2013, a social worker is told that Jeremiah moved to Florida with the grandma, and there was no follow-up, Mike. Strike one right there.
Vinny, they have been monitoring this family since 2011. For years, and they did nothing to follow up on this. Oh, okay. Well, why have they been following them from 2011? Because they have a history of abuse. He and his siblings. That's the scary part, too. He had siblings.
September 2013, this is when Jeremiah was last seen by relatives. November of 2013, the last DCF visit to the home, okay? Didn't actually see Jeremiah, but visited the home, and his social worker left the business card behind. That's going to help.
Did that social worker come in? Did they talk to the other kids? Did they do any follow-up at all? No. And that's why 3 have been fired. A social worker, a supervisor, and an area supervisor.
December of 2013, Jeremiah's 8-year-old sister told counselors that mom's boyfriend had abused her. The girl and brother taken into protective custody finally realized that Jeremiah is missing. December of 2013, Mike.
Oh, no, they left the card then, too, Vinny. It's disgusting that they didn't follow up.
Social worker, supervisor, area manager assigned to Jeremiah's case fired because they didn't conduct the required in-person monthly checks of the family. March of 2014, Jeremiah's mother, 28-year-old Elsa Oliver, and her boyfriend indicted by a grand jury on charges related to Jeremiah's disappearance and child abuse. April 2014. His body is found off of Central Massachusetts Highway, and that's the sad, sad story of this 5-year-old boy and how we got to where we are. Let's bring in Jane Velez-Mitchell, the host of Jane Velez-Mitchell. It's on every night at 7 here on HLN. And Jane, this is another one. It's our system has a certain way that we are supposed to be able to protect someone, especially if they're on the radar of being in a place of danger. Yet it didn't happen here, Jane.
Exactly. And we have to keep in mind that people who are capable of abusing their children are more than capable of lying. So if somebody says, oh, the little boy went off to live with another relative in Florida, so what? People lie through their teeth. There's got to be follow-up. And it's good that there has been fallout in terms of firings and internal investigations, but we have heard this story too many times, Vinny. I think DCF all over the country, Department of Children and Families, coast to coast, needs a complete shakeup in each department where they are, because we can't keep covering these same kinds of stories over and over again about these social workers dropping the ball and leaving these children at the mercy of monsters.
And Vinny, we know when they cut budgets, where's one of the first places they usually cut in, let's say, a county, a city budget? They go after the social workers, you know, and their caseload is unbelievable. But still, we've got to protect these children.
Yeah, it's such an important job. It's a thankless job. They don't make a lot of money, obviously, the workers, and a lot of them have their hearts absolutely in the right place. That's why they go into that line of work. Right. But the bottom line, you've got the responsibility. Little children's lives are literally in your hands.
He's only 5 years old. I mean, he didn't get to enjoy his life. He didn't get to enjoy his little sister and his brother. I didn't get to enjoy him as much as I wanted to.
That's Jeremiah Oliver's dad, talking about the tragic death of his 5-year-old son. Now, Jeremiah not living with his father, but was living with his mother, and apparently her boyfriend was in the picture. They're under arrest. They are charged with kidnapping, assault, battery with deadly weapon, reckless endangerment. Those are the charges against them. But I want you to take a listen to Jose Oliver, Jeremiah's father, because he's pointing the finger at a lot of folks.
I believe that Alberto, Elsa, and DCF, they all had a part. They all at fault in their own way. Elsa for not saying anything. DCF for not reporting to the house when they should have. I mean, I blame all of them. I do.
Absolutely tragic, and obviously the father had nothing to do with the death. But what I'm wondering is if your son is missing for that long and no one has reported him missing, why don't you know? Are you attempting to touch base with him? Is mom coming up with excuses why you can't talk to your son or see your son? I don't know all the facts there, but I think that's got to be part of the equation for everyone to be in this child's life. Jane, let me ask you about that, Jane, because the father, in this case, didn't have custody, was not taking care of the child, Jane, but for the child to be missing without a trace for such a long time, it seems that he needed Dad in his life, so Dad would have known when he went missing.
Yeah, and I understand that there was some kind of restraining order that kept the child separated from the father, not necessarily that he did anything wrong, but that the child was with the mother and that they were somehow precluded from getting together. Nonetheless, there are ways to catch up and find out how your children are doing. And I think that every single adult involved in this story deserves some kind of blame. The hero in this story is this man's 7-year-old daughter, the one who finally blurted out and told the truth and said, my little brother hasn't been around for months. She did that in December, and we're all being abused. That's when the mother and her boyfriend go to jail, and then they proceed to refuse to cooperate with authorities who start looking for this missing child. Now, what's such a mystery, and we're going to cover this tonight at 7, is that this child suddenly appears, this child's body, in a suitcase or a duffel bag off the side of the road as the result of a tip from inside jail. So are there more people involved?
Interesting. I want to bring in John Harrell. He's with the Florida Department of Children and Families. John, how does this happen? I mean, a lot of things have to take place for a child to go missing and no one even notice.
Vinny, the fact that there were no visits made for several months, that points to several serious problems in the system. Look, the Massachusetts DCF commissioner has said in her own words that this was a serious failure. So reforms are needed. Now, what you have here in Florida is this. What goes on is when the caseworkers make visits, they have to make documentation, and supervisors have to review that documentation. So you need to have these checks and balances in the system. Bottom line, if the case is open, the caseworkers are going to be seeing those kids at least once each month, checking their welfare, well-being, and any signs of abuse and neglect.
Yeah, absolutely, and really a failure across the board. And, you know, every time we do one of these stories, the real issue is, how does this continue to happen? Is it just a matter of resources, John?
I think it's a matter of follow-through, making sure that the resources are used properly. And look, if there are additional resources that are needed, as Mike talked about earlier, then we've got to have legislatures, governors advocate for those resources. You got some investigators around the country who have high caseloads. It makes it very hard to check on children to see how they're doing. I think when you have cases like this, though, you got to do a top to bottom review. You got to look at possible reform, possible follow through so this doesn't happen again. Comments made by the Massachusetts CCF commissioner show that some big reforms could be coming.
All right, John, great to see you. Thanks so much for your insight. And, of course, check out Jane Velez-Mitchell tonight. She'll be all over this story.